25th, 2025 at 6:03 p.m. Normally our moderator Rich Warner attends. He had to deal with some emergency business and is not able to attend. So I've asked Andy if he could step in and moderate this evening. He agreed and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Hi, folks. So pre-town meeting is an opportunity for you guys to get some information. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions of the board that they may have answers to or they may not. One of the more valuable things about it is that when you ask questions they don't have answers to or don't have all the information you're looking for, they can then be prepared for town meeting. So we're not going to run this like town meeting. No motions, seconds, or anything like that. I'm just going to read the articles. And then I will take questions by raise of hand. I'll try and do it in order. I'll probably repeat your question just so that we make sure we get it on tape and Jeanette can write the minutes and understand what's going on. My first time standing in for a moderator, so Richie's got some big shoes to fill, so bear with me if I don't get it right. It might be a shorter meeting than otherwise it would have been. Okay, so article number 1, to choose all Dover town officers for the following positions required by law to be elected at the annual meeting: auditor, 3 years; first constable, 1 year; library trustee, 5 years; library trustee, 2 years remaining on a 5-year; library trustee, 4 years remaining on a 5-year; town moderator, 1 year; select board member, 3 year; select board member, 2 year; and a select board member, 1 year remaining on a 3-year; town clerk, 3 years; treasurer, 3 years; and the trustee of public funds for 1 year. Pretty self-explanatory. There's a sample ballot posted by the door. There are no contested races. I appreciate everybody who's running. We don't have any races without a named candidate on the ballot, which is awesome. Not that there's much we can answer about this article, but does anyone have questions about Article 1? Yes, Jim.
I think the average raise for the town employees is between 5 and 11%. And I wonder if the select board can tell me how they can justify an increase of almost 70%.
So, Jim, we're going to get to that right away. Under Article 3 probably is the first time it will come up. So save that thought. I'll be right back to you. Okay. No questions on Article 1. Article 2. Shall the voters accept the annual report of the auditors and other town officers? We have annual reports by the door. If anyone did not grab one, go ahead and grab one. Beside them on the chair are Vicki's notes regarding the budget. So grab one of those sheets as well. Article 3. Shall the voters compensate town officers as follows? Select board chair, $4,500 annual stipend. Select board members, $4,000 annual stipend. Town treasurer, $5,000 annual stipend. Town clerk, $80,307.41. Town auditors, $22.47 per hour. Election officials, $20 per hour. All others, chairman, $17.50 per hour. Members, $16 per hour. And mileage based on the federal reimbursement rate for the month in which the mileage occurred.
This article is requesting a raise for the select board. We haven't had a raise in I think 8 years. So the chair is currently 3,000 and we are proposing 4,500 and the members are 2,500 and we're proposing 4,000.
So Jim, do you want to restate your question, or is this where you want to ask your question, or Does that answer your question?
I would like to know how they arrived at that figure to get a 70% increase.
A 70% increase? For us? Considering the time that we put in on the board, I'm probably averaging about 12 hours a week, that I'm doing for 52 weeks. That's a lot of hours, and the board felt that the compensation level was extremely low, and we hammered around a few different amounts and kind of settled somewhere in the middle.
Sarah,
One of the other considerations we discussed was the fact that the townwide reappraisal is coming up and that there are undoubtedly going to be a significant number of appeals, which we will all be responsible for showing up and attending. We don't get paid extra or separate hourly rate for any meetings. Everything that we do is paid in that stipend.
Jim,
Is not that reappraisal in 26,
This pays.
not 25?
most likely, yes.
So we're front loading those hours that you anticipate for the man.
It's gonna go, I thought we figured that there was.
Joe?
I have nothing to say. I wanted to be 100%. I don't see what the issue is. I think we spend a lot of time between the five of us. And Jim, you're more than welcome to bring it up to the voters, and if they wanna bring it down lower or do something different, so be it. I don't have an explanation for it, Jim. Then the fact that, like Vicky said, it's been 8 years and there's a lot of time, a lot more commitments that are being made than I did 12 years ago. In the state, we have to do an ethics thing, we have to do all these different things all the time. Stay up to abreast of what's going on.
Jim,
I've not said that it's not worth it, I'm just saying justify.
and I'm guessing they did their best to do that.
Can I ask you?
Julia.
Thank you. If you would share what you think your average rate is for the hours that you, I mean, quick and dirty, it seems like you're far less than the 1750 that a chair of the, a committee, another one of your committees is earning. Just saying, what's your average?
I wouldn't want.
Sarah is putting some numbers on it. Of course, each one of us, it's different, but there are times when I feel like I have 2 full-time jobs.
Yes, Scott.
And just, not that I'm running for this, to get that stipend, but I think one of the reasons why it's on there, it can be discussed. If you have an issue with it, then bring it up. And it's not like, this is what we've proposed. You say, you know what, that's great, but I think it only should be 3,000. Or there's been times where people had said we should give 20,000 to Valley Medical or Deerfield Valley, and then it ended up going something much higher. So that's why it's on here. I think that was the number that's proposed. If you think it should be less, you propose that.
Mark,
So before I ask the question, I'm gonna say I think more than, I know how much work that you all do. But maybe you can have, if you haven't already, get a sampling of towns around the area. Because that question is gonna come up unless you already have. I think it'd be interesting to see what they are. I know at least in the school board realm, River Valley is in the low. And low compared to a lot of other districts.
That's a good point. I know a few years ago, Brattleboro was paying their select board chair 20,000. And their members were 12. And I think that they've walked it down a little bit, but that was what they were doing. And they have a town manager and an assistant town manager.
Joe,
Just to reiterate, each town is individually a little different. It's the size, size of the budget, the size of the amount of people that we're working with. We also don't have a town manager, so a lot of things that the town manager be doing, we have responsibility of doing above and beyond without a town manager, so that makes it a little bit more time consuming. Things that you can't be told that we have to do. So I say,
Completely understand. I think the question.
yeah.
Yes, Sarah.
Okay, so really rough and dirty, 10 hours a week on average, and I think that's low, which comes out to about $7.60 an hour. At the raise rate, not at the old rate. And I will attest, Vicky does easily half again as much or more than anybody else on this board. So the $500 difference between what we're getting and what she's getting, or I shouldn't say it like Vicky gets, the chair compared to the regular members contributes a significantly higher number of hours than the board members. And is probably, if you take that $500 difference and look at the extra hours, that person in that seat is probably getting less than 50 cents an hour for the difference between being a regular board member and being a chair.
Any other questions on Article 3? Okay, moving right along. Shall the voters authorize general fund expenditure for operational expenses of $2,768,818.01 for the coming year? Would
So
you like to explain, Vicky?
the operational budget starts on page 27 and ends on page 36. The summary at the end on the last page is after all the appropriations that are either in the budget or will be voted on at town meeting.
Joe? Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Sure, it's dark in here. This is lazy as it gets in here.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can't know what she's.
Julia.
Summary is on page,
Oh, sorry.
is it?
No, that includes the highway.
That's the highway inclusive, sorry. The end of the operational, we have to vote highway separately from other departments.
So the bottom of 36 is where the summary for the town budget without the highway is.
There it is. 36.
Mm-hmm. So.
Questions, comments on Article 4? Yes, Julia.
There's the operational summary. And I want to confirm that that's where you have the proposed 25-26 budget. And then below that is the highway fund, which makes it all very easy to look at. But the left column is not actual, that's the budget for last year, correct?
The left column is the current budget that is not finished.
Correct.
So we're little more than halfway through.
Okay, so that's.
So the trouble is the labeling of actual instead of budgeted. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Julia.
Well, so I guess I'll just throw out, that's okay.
Right on.
The pay for town employees, 5% increase, except for police, 10%. The police department is fully staffed and we want to keep it that way. it was a request by the chief, and we agreed it's worth it to not have to train people, have a good team and a dedicated team, and so that's the pay schedule.
Questions on the big number? Yes,
Yes.
Obviously, the population of this town goes up big time. Has there been any, and I'm not saying, I'm just looking at saving money, people who live here. I'm not looking to, tell you that people should lose their jobs or anything, but I'm wondering if it would make sense, since we probably don't need as many police officers in the summer and in the spring when nobody's here, if hours would be cut back, or people would some of those people could be paid less. I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense if we have that many police officers in the winter, and that's exactly what we need. Why do we need that many in the spring?
I'd like to refer to our chief. Can you speak to that?
We're not overstaffed in the spring, we're understaffed in the winter.
What are you saying?
That we're not overstaffed in the spring, we're understaffed in the winter.
I could use a couple more officers.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Tabby,
Comment from the tech side, if we're speaking from the floor, just please make sure that you speak up and clearly so that the mic can pick you up for an accurate recording. Some of us are naturally soft-spoken, but we need to catch everything.
thank you,
That's
Tabby,
important.
thank you. More questions, concerns on the big number? Information you'd like to see at town meeting? Yes, Julia.
I will just note. Medical insurance is 23% or something like that.
We looked at a lot of different options. And yes, it is. I think that Vermont's got a real problem with their insurance rates, and this year Blue Cross is catching up because they don't have enough money in the bank. So they're putting it on the payers. So yes, it is up.
Don't hesitate to raise your hand if you want to speak to this number. Once we move on, I'll come back to it if you need.
We're not as.
This is pre-tip, yeah.
Okay. Other questions regarding Article 4? Okey dokey. Article 5. Shall the voters authorize highway fund expenditure for operational expenses of $1,945,435.90 for the coming year?
That budget is on 37 and 38. And this includes a 5% raise for our highway crew. Again, we're fully staffed, and that's how we want to keep it. And so they requested 5%.
Yes, Bob.
Under that, what's the, what material are we gonna truck with? FedEx.
Yeah.
Okay. Just curious.
Travis.
Sand has been, lately our sand has been trucked separately from the purchase of. And so this is to keep the trucking from coming out of the sand project.
Right.
It went up so much.
Okay.
The 80,000 that we had in there for sand. It's gone. That's what, like you'll see last year we were way over it, and it's the trucking that did it.
So Bobby, is there a specific line item you're looking at?
It's right here. It's new. It's down here,
So
38.
then that actually, then that raised the stand budget by 66%. Instead of 6%. Even though it's a new line item, it's for sand. So it actually did raise it 66%. Right?
Well, I was gonna use it for other things too, if we needed to, if there was funding left, yes, you know, we could use it to truck gravel or any of the other items, yeah.
That's all I need.
Right.
That's all I need. 'Cause I
Yeah,
just
no,
raised the stand budget.
I did it because of the sand, but not solely
Just for
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm all set.
All set, Bob?
All set. That's my lead.
Thank you. Mark?
Last year, there was discussion of a pit that was going up in sale in Jamaica. That seemed to be outrageously expensive, et cetera. I'm just wondering if there was, what the follow-up was on that.
This land is still for sale. It's a quagmire of a lot of different things on that property. And the more he talks about it, the more we realize that this is a pitfall. And there could be environmental issues up there already. And you know what we do with environment, we end up having to, yeah. So we didn't go that way. Yes, yes.
Yes, Travis?
Larger companies around, you know, if we purchase our materials from, thought it was where
They would have bought it. They would have. Yeah.
Other questions on the highway budget? Don't hesitate to raise your hand. We're all friends. Mark?
Heating budget, that would say that's heating on. Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Other questions? Highway budget? Yes, Dana?
Police, they getting better benefits, or are they getting?
No, everybody's getting the same benefits.
Marco?
I think, heating standards. That's $1,000, so this year there's less people taking it, so. On a cost basis, it has gone up 20-something%, but in actual, you add up, this is by employee, so.
So the demographics of our employees, if they're single or a couple or a family, it makes a dramatic difference in the amount. Yeah, a lot.
Does that answer your question, Dana? Yeah? Julia?
I noticed also that there's additional contribution to childcare in each of the buckets. Is that something new? Is that requirement?
Yes, it's a new law. And it's a very small percentage right now, but we know how these things go. But yes, it is a requirement that that money is taken. No, well, the town pays the money and then it goes to the state to help expand more childcare, affordability, support childcare. And that is a new law.
Statewide. Yes.
Good to bring up, so people know.
Highway budget? More questions? Don't be bashful. You're among friends. For the most part.
Mostly.
Okay. Article 6. Shall the voters raise and appropriate $600,000 for the capital paving fund?
Sarah's gonna do the paving at the. capital.
Sarah's gonna give us an explanation, then we'll get to questions.
So we've got three roads that are getting, 4 roads that are getting paid. They're all, I'm sorry.
What page you on?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on page 40. Everything that is being paved this year is being newly paved. It's not newly, all of these are newly paved. All of these are currently dirt and they're being paved. There's a definite benefit in terms of the cost of maintenance per paved versus dirt. And these are not heavily traveled roads. So the expectation is that they're going to hold with the paving. We're not going to be repairing the paving as frequently as we would on some other roads. Right now, we're doing basically the second third of Blue Brook Road. We did the first third last year. This year, we're doing from where the pavement ends to Amique Road. And then next year, we'll be paving from Amique out to the north end of Blue Brook where it meets 100. And then that whole road will be paved.
More, Sarah, or is that?
On paving, no.
Questions on paving? Mark was first. I'll come right back to you. Mark.
Okay, and change it from questions or requests, questions or any of these new. In the future, since we can't tell, we may just add a star next to the ones that are new. On the target distance.
Good idea.
And the key definitions.
Thank you, Mark. Jerry.
It's okay, it's half is less, half less than it was last year. Last year we did 22,000 feet. This year you're doing 10. Is the amount of tons required to do it, which is about the same as it was last year? You do twice as much this year. Is that because they're not paved roads and we need more?
Travis.
It is.
Okay.
The tonnage goes up and remains the same because of the base coat. We've been doing 3 inches, 3 inches of base and 1 inch of top. So the tonnage is in your base, get that laid down. Then your top coat.
Okay.
Yep, that's why it's not quite as far, but the tonnage is the same, correct?
Okay, so the 600 extra tons that you need is going to cost $71,000 more than it did last year. Is that because the price has gone up?
The pricing.
What's the difference in pricing in year?
They're expecting it to stay the same. Because of, I guess, the election year or something. I've talked to a number of companies. They said with the, because they pre-buy their oil. They're expecting it to stay the same, but we budget a little more just to be safe.
Okay, so you're budgeting more to be safe.
Correct, and in doing so, doing some of the new roads, you run into going over on tonnage, sometimes more or less.
And if you don't spend as much as you think, what happens to that extra money? Does it get returned to the town
It'll carry over to the next.
season? Thank you.
Other questions regarding the paving, capital paving fund? Sometimes that's a good one. All right, Julia.
Your plan, it looks like you're gonna run a deficit, into 26. On page 40.
So dark. It is really dim in here. Yeah, it is. Well, with capital funds, that's sometimes what happens. And we will fund, don't want to take too much extra money. But we will come back. That's not unusual.
And you'll see it in some of the other budgets. You'll see it in some of the other budgets as well.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Other questions regarding the capital paving budget? Appropriation. Capital paving appropriation. Okay. Shall the voters raise and appropriate $650,000 for the capital equipment fund?
Okay, so I'm gonna ask Travis to explain the tractor and dump trailer, which is a new purchase for this year. It's not replacing an existing vehicle.
What page?
That's, I'm sorry, page 42.
So in this line item for the 150,000 for the tractor and dump trailer. I'm looking to try to save some money on our trucking by getting a used tractor and a used dump trailer. That we can run and bring more material at one load. I've got 3 drivers right now that can drive that unit. We previously had in this line item for a $225,000 replacement of a 10-wheeler. I want to do some more research on a 10-wheeler because the next one I'm looking at considering maybe a hook lift setup for our 10-wheeler. So then maybe we can start to try to haul some of our own containers from the transfer station. So this also gives me some time to do some more research on that. So so I removed the 225 and put in the 150 for the used tractor and dump trailer. And also we're doing the roadside mower this year. The new roadside mower is needed. The other one has worked great, served us well. It's got everything established. With the new machine should, take care of everything that the old one has with ease, because like I said, everything's established. It's gonna be mainly just mowing grass. Yeah, those are the only 2 I had for capital.
But the roadside mower is extremely expensive.
It is, yes.
But we also have incredibly well-maintained roadsides compared to many towns. When I drive, I always look and like, we've got the best, the grass is cut, it's cut a couple of times, it's cut back far. There's not a lot of encroaching brush. It's really noticeable. So kudos to the road crew.
Yes.
Questions on the capital equipment appropriations, what Travis spoke to or anything else? Mark?
So if I remember correctly, last year it was 600,000 that was being off the purchase of some fire department equipment. Is that equipment being pushed off again, or was it last year pushed off far into the future? Couldn't remember.
The ladder truck, it continues to be
Getting ready for that.
push. We're getting ready. And in fact, I believe next year we'll probably set up a dedicated fund just for money going in for the ladder truck, because it is going to be an extremely expensive purchase. We are purchasing a fire engine, which we have ordered, and it's not going to be here for another year,
Yeah.
year and a half.
It's 5 months.
How many?
35 months.
When now?
35 months from when we,
Ordered it.
35 months.
so 30 months.
Thank you.
Other questions regarding the capital equipment fund?
And I
Yes,
just wanted Mike to speak to the police cruisers.
Yeah, so this year and the next, we're replacing our sedans, which obviously cost less than the SUVs. The sedans that we currently have, they no longer make that model, and been doing a whole lot of research and trying to save a little bit of money. What we're gonna do for the next 2 years to replace the sedans is replace them with Subarus. Already looked into putting lights, sirens, all that, so that number you see at 51,000 is total outfitted cruiser on the road. Saves a little money and hopefully they'll last a little longer than go on the street. They're dumping a lot of money in it.
Dana,
Auctioning off the old cruisers, like you did with the, what's the Ford truck?
other questions on the capital equipment appropriation? Don't be shy. Julia,
It's also the fire department, the utility truck. Okay. And then may I make one Lorraine points?
absolutely.
We have that it's a $650,000
Appropriation.
thank you, appropriation, but on my favorite page, 40. 39, thank you, Terry. It only reflects 600,000. In the summary.
Look at that. Julia, we're gonna put you on the payroll.
Yeah, that is a typo.
You gonna run next year?
So we should, at town meeting, point that correction out immediately.
I'm missing.
And perhaps budgeted instead of actual. You can point that out as well. Thank you, Julia. Other questions regarding the capital equipment appropriation? Moving right along. Shall the voters raise and appropriate $120,000 for the capital building improvement fund?
Okay, that's page 41. For this time. I'm looking at last year versus this year. The police station, you can see what the allocations are for if you look down below. The town garage, the overhead doors are more than halfway done, almost 2/3 done. So they're getting finished, and then all of the overhead doors and am I right, Charles, the sills and the elbow, they're gonna be completely seals, it's gonna be. And everything else I think is pretty clear, but please ask us if it's not.
Questions on the capital building improvement fund? Tabby.
Just wondering where, I know that we've been doing some research into air conditioning, heating efficiencies, things like that, and I don't know if we've gotten any closer to getting solid proposals and pricing for that, but where might that land, or it's simply not budgeted yet because we don't have an answer yet?
It's in this year's budget. It's under central air town office, next to the last line on page 41.
It's not in.
Sorry, thank you. I was looking in the wrong column. Thank you.
Jerry.
In the town office for 25-26, this carpeting and interior paint. And there's probably no question that it needs interior paint, but I wonder about the carpeting. If it would make more sense to put in some type of laminate floor, because as you walk in there, the carpeting is just filthy dirty. And if you had some type of laminate floor, you might be able to clean it a little bit better. Certainly a floor will hold up better than carpeting. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you, Jerry. Duly noted. Questions on the Capitol building appropriation, $120,000. Okie dokie. Article 9, shall the voters establish a reserve fund to be called the Town Hall Library Well Capital Reserve Fund, to be used for maintenance, repair, and or replacement of the well serving the town hall and library, and fund it with $165,216.41 from the general fund surplus in accordance with 24 VSA section 2804.
Okay. This is a very specific number and and the reason we're doing this is because ARPA money had to be used in 2024. We used it. We used it to fund some operational things, salaries. And so this is the amount that we had left over from ARPA that we hadn't spent. We wanted to put it towards this well system and the water system, but we don't have the permits yet to get the well in. And there were other suggestions of where we could use the money, but we wanted to dedicate it to getting this water system fixed. So we used that money that we hadn't spent on salaries. And so this money is the excess that we are going to have because that money was moved to salaries. So we can put it in a special reserve fund for the well system. So it's a kind of a wash thing, but we had to use the money or we'd have to give it back. So we were and this is what VLCT suggested that we do. Other towns ran into the same problem, and they gave us the verbiage of the whole thing. So that's why we did it.
Julia.
The original ARPA money was requested for the well piece or just?
It was just ARPA money. We just got it. And it was 320 something thousand. And we've spent some of it on various other programs or equipment or whatever. But this was what was left. And we had said, and we also spent some of that to pay down some of the bills that this had incurred. So this is what's left over. And so we want to keep it protected so that we can get this fixed.
Questions regarding the article to create the fund to pay for the well? This well, right here. Should we amend it to include lighting, new lighting,
Bigger bowls.
a door that closes?
So you just can't see, but it's.
In all seriousness, any other questions regarding this article? Yes, Mark.
I don't know the article, but for those of us who haven't been paying close attention recently on the well saga, what is the current status?
Well, Jeanette is our #1 well person, but the water source is good. We're now looking at trying to get the permitting to get it piped, and then there's also a lot of work to do in the utility room over at the Brook building for various, get rid of the stuff we've got in there and some other new filtration. We're going to have to monitor this forever. Storage, and then also heating, and there's a lot of work to do over there in that situation, but we're waiting on the state, right? Yes.
Yes. It's everything, can't really hook up the well until we have that utility room configured so that it can hold the water storage, and we need a new boiler in there. It's just, there's a lot of moving pieces. They all have to work together.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you for the update. Sorry, Joe.
Julia.
What? Do you think that the $165,216.41 will cover the cost of what we need?
We don't know.
Okay.
That is an excellent.
We don't have any engineering. We don't know. We
don't know what they want. Basically, we need to know what we need for filtration and what we need for a tank in there. The two things right now.
And the piping, because the well is down,
And then we have to run the pipe. That's extra foot pump. It's down the hill.
the well is halfway down Bartlett's Hill here.
Correct.
So. On town property.
Other questions regarding earmarking that ARPA money to deal with the well situation here? Okey dokey. Article 10. Shall the voters raise and appropriate $269,701 for the Dover Free Library? Do we have a library representative here tonight?
The budget's on
No,
page
we do have a budget. What page?
82.
82. 82. If you want to ask questions, I'll do my best to write them down and get them to the library so they'll have answers for you at town meeting.
I was the lead, I may not know some of the questions. We'll find out too.
Any questions on the library budget, page 82 or their appropriation? Yes, Jerry.
We give a plethora of money to numerous organizations that are listed here, and along with these, we give money to the Gathering Place, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm wondering if it would make any sense to look at the budgets that these places have, the Historical Society, the Gathering Place, SASH, et cetera, before we decide we want to give them this much money. Maybe the board could say, if you want more than $3,000, you need to show us a budget. I don't know, that's just a question.
Thank you, Jerry. So in other words, in the same way that the library and maybe East Dover Fire Department supply us with budgets, if you're asking for a certain amount over a certain threshold, we want to see your budget. Duly noted. Other questions regarding the library budget or appropriation? Okie dokie. Moving right along. Shall the voters raise and appropriate $30,000 for Deerfield Valley Rescue? Any representatives of Deerfield Valley Rescue here that would like to say a word or two before we move?
Their report is on page 107.
Report on page 107.
It's not a budget, but it's a
Report.
Yeah.
107. Gotcha.
This is the same amount as last year. We did. Yes.
Yes, we did.
When we're currently.
Questions regarding Deerfield Valley's appropriation of $30,000. Article 12, shall the voters raise and appropriate $25,000 for support and services at home, SASH? Questions regarding SASH's appropriation? Do we have anybody who would like to speak on behalf of SASH before we take questions?
That's on, their report is on page 105.
I would like to give you the opportunity, Becky, so.
So SASH serves the town of the Valley through Medicare funding. That does not even come close to covering our funding. And here in the Valley, we don't just cover apartments. Most of SASH is in senior housing, whereas we know in the Valley, we don't have enough housing, we have not enough senior housing. So we go out and serve people that are in their own homes. And most recently, we've been working with a couple of tough cases with the police department. And the coordinators don't have the figures here today, but I have them Tuesday. Are delivering upwards of like 50 homes between Wilmington and Dover right now for food monthly, and their mileage is down.
Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
Questions regarding Sash's appropriation? Jerry? Yes.
So what I heard you say is that the only people that we serve who need help are people who have Medicare. So if I am 80 years old and I do not have Medicare, and I'm living in town, I cannot get any help from this.
So do you not have Medicare, or do you have Medicare Advantage? You don't have Medicare.
I'm not talking about myself, I'm just talking about a person. I have a friend who's 80 years old, does not have Medicare, she lives there in Dover. She needs help, she had breast cancer, she had an operation, and she cannot get help from SAP.
So she should be calling me, because she cannot sign up for, if she doesn't have Medicare, she cannot go on our regular staff program. Not my call, that's a state.
So if you call,
Jerry?
We will definitely
Let her finish.
We will deliver food. We can work with her primary doctor if she signs a HIPAA release, but she would not go into count as our staff membership. And that's not my call. That's, you have to have Medicare to be counted on the staff membership. And that's one of the reasons that back, I want to say in 2017, maybe, Bill has been funding us, and that's one of the reasons, because we had quite a few people in town that did not qualify for SAG, did not have insurance, and I'm not one to say no. So I don't know if that answers it.
so I guess the bottom line is if somebody needs help and they don't have Medicare, they can call them.
They can call, yes.
Is that good, Jerry?
Yep.
Thank you, Becky. Any other questions? Sarah?
Let me just. So I'm trying to, part of the subsidy that the town is giving you assists you in helping people like the person Jerry is describing. So that's
correct.
one of the reasons why why you make that request and why we honor it.
That is,
Okay.
I unfortunately, because I HIPAA, I cannot give you names, but I can give you counts, and I usually give a count every year.
That's good to know, thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Thanks, Becky.
Other questions regarding Sash's appropriation? Yes,
May I add one thing?
yeah, absolutely.
We also have throughout my staffs, actually I'm the 8, because we just merged. Shires Housing is who I have formerly worked. As of January 1st, Shires Housing Trust of Rutland County and NeighborWorks of Western Vermont have all merged to become the second largest affordable housing in Vermont. Along with that, I'm talking with Eric, because NeighborWorks can start bringing fun, programs to the valley to help people with, insulation, heat squad, low interest or no payback funding, but for remodeling. So I just talked to that department of our company now, and I would like to introduce them to Eric to maybe come talk at the housing committee.
Thank you, Becky. Anybody else? Questions on Sash's appropriation? Alrighty. Shall the voters raise and appropriate $20,000 for the Dover Historical Society? Dan?
The purpose of the Historical Society is to preserve the history of the town of Dover and its artifacts. There are no salaries paid to anyone, it's all volunteer. The appropriation we got last year, we have not used this yet. And if you look at page 99, you'll see at the bottom of the page, some of the great deterioration of the building. If we were to do a budget, we roughly spend $5,000 a year to run the Historical Society, that's to pay all the utilities. But in a year like this, it might be more based upon the temperatures we had this winter. The events that we give, we do community-based events. We do the 2 pie sales. And as you can see at the top of the page on 99, we help sponsor which we'll call it the Dover Day. 2 of the members of the Historical Society had requested to do it, but by the time that they did, it was impossible to get funding from the town because this was always something that was funded by the town. So the Historical Society helped them get it going. As a result of that, at the event, it was so successful that they put out donations that we donate, and the donations paid more money than we spent on helping them out. So it was a net slight gain. The real gain was we got 8 new members as a result of in this room showing the history of Dover, and people wish to join. The 2 projects that we have to do, and if you look at the bottom of the page, as a result of having metal roofing, it has destroyed all the windowsills on all the buildings. In 1995 was when they built the building, and she's asking the windows to last, 30 years or more. They were not very sophisticated windows. They were just plain windows that had screen and which were aluminum storm windows. So right now you can't even get a banner and use a stapler to staple it to the building because they'll just disintegrate on you. So that's part of our project. When we went to renewal by Anderson, they wanted $100,000, but because it was a nonprofit, they were going to do it for 80. We have secured through Home Depot and Pioneer Timber Frames roughly $20,000 to replace 20 of the windows in the building. The other thing we're doing is if you went out that door over there, you would see a staircase that is made out of concrete by precast concrete in Walpole, in Hinsdale. And we've contracted Peter Veritas and Jason Evans to replicate that staircase on the right-hand side of the building because we have problems with water coming into the building. So we have to do some work there because that laid up stone wall is starting to fall apart, which would take the right side of the building as you look at it and cause a lot of problems. Also, the staircase that takes you down to the basement is about 28 inches wide. And a lot of people, especially elderly people, will not go down that stairway. So when we put the concrete stairway in with the railings, there's also a future possibility of putting one of those elevators to take people downstairs so more people can visit, because there's more artifacts in the basement than there is in the top of the store. Any questions?
Questions regarding the appropriation for the Dover Historical Society? Concerns, information you'd like to see at town meeting? We're all good with the Dover Historical Society. Okie dokie. So shall the voters raise and appropriate $4,000 for Southeast Vermont Transit / the Mover to provide transportation services to the residents of the town? Anybody from the Mover here?
This was put on by petition. The movers funding has been severely cut and they are going to all the towns that they serve asking for appropriations for the first time. So I know that because my husband is he is the treasurer of the movement. So, and on the board. So this was something that they thought that they might be able to raise some more money because they don't want to cut roots, although they are cutting roots right now. So, and I'm suspecting probably more cutting might be coming.
So, petitioned article, on the warning to appropriate $4,000 for the mover. Any questions? I'll write them down and maybe, give them to Randy before town meeting. Mark?
Questions to comment, and just because I think it's only fair to upstairs know that River Valley donates 500, I think, to the mover as well. So I just think you know that.
Yeah, and they just cut this route from Dover School to West Dover. So you have to pick up the mover in West Dover now, if you want to go to Twin Valley or to the OSEC to get on the one that goes to Brattleboro. Yeah. But it wasn't, I guess the usage was small. Now this is all secondhand, but that's what I heard.
Other questions for the mover appropriation? Tabby?
Is it's being cut due to lack of funding. To what level can we keep some of those services available?
That's a good question, and I suspect somebody from the mover will be here at town meeting.
Thank you, Tabby.
No, Randy's covering.
Other questions, comments, concerns regarding the mover appropriation? Okey dokey. Article 15, shall the voters raise and appropriate $3,372 for Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies SEVIDS activities? Anybody from SEVIDS present?
I'm not from Sevitz, but this is the same appropriation that they've asked for year after year. It's based on population. It's $3 per resident, and they based it on our 2010 census number, not our 2020, which would have been significantly higher because I think the census brought us up to close to 1,800.
Close. Yes.
So they're basing it on 11. Here's the number. 1,124 people.
And they usually send a representative.
Yeah.
Questions for SEVIDS folks that we can write down and give to them before the meeting? Yes.
Or it seems that they support jobs for Dover folks who commute out of town to work. It also says that they have created programs like pipelines and pathways. I think, it sounds wonderful, but I'd like to know exactly what they do for Dover if we're gonna give them money.
Good question. Thank you, Jerry.
Pathways is a high school program to get high school students into more non-traditional college, non-college, and our students go to Twin Valley and Brattleboro and Newland and Gray, which is where the program operates. So, but they'll send a representative.
Thank you, Vicky.
My daughter went through one of the programs.
Huh?
She's a Dover resident.
Cool. Right on.
I presented at those.
Fantastic. Other questions, comments, concerns regarding SEVIDS? All righty. Moving along. Shall the voters increase the number of Dover's justices of the peace from 5 to 7 in accordance with the Vermont Constitution, Chapter 2, Section 52? I requested that this article be on the warning related to the reappraisal, which the last one we did was in 2010, and I was clerk at the time, and we did this very same thing. Basically, when you do a townwide reappraisal, you wind up with a lot of appeals. And you have a schedule of hearings. it's pretty intense. It's like a couple nights a week for months to get through all these appeals. They're heard by a board called the Board of Civil Authority, which is made up of the Select Board, myself. Mark, are you on the Board of Civil Authority?
so.
No, Board of Abatement. Yeah, Select Board, myself, and the Justices of the Peace. We have 5 currently Justices of the Peace. That's approximately what the town supports. We don't wind up with ballots with nobody running for Justices of the Peace when we have 5. However, in a reappraisal year, there's generally enough interest to get those extra 2 seats. And when you schedule hearings, you only need 3 members of that board, which is a pretty large board, right, to hear a case. So we can set up a hearing day and we can have 4 different hearings going on in the room if we have the people to do that. So this just gives that board an extra 2 people. By law, we can ask for an extra 2 people for that year to expedite those hearings as much as we possibly can and get people their hearings and their decisions, and also lessen the burden on the rest of us. It worked out great in 2010. Shortly after that, those 2 seats went empty on the ballot, and we came back before you and asked you to reduce the number to 5 again. So it's just something we do to help with reappraisals and that hearing process. It worked good last time. I would ask you to vote yes, and we'll get a couple more JPs in there. Yeah, that's all I need to say, but do you have any questions? Mark?
What, if any, requirements are there EEJP? And part 2, what training is involved in being
Okay, so you need to be elected by the town of Dover, so you have to be a voter in the town of Dover. Otherwise, nothing. You get elected. The trainings, basically, there's nothing required of you, but there's lots of opportunities for you, particularly regarding these property tax appeals. VLCT runs trainings. You will have other experienced board members with you to help you along and show you the ropes if you don't have time for those sorts of things. There's also wide variation in how these things are handled town to town. I'll leave it at that. But there's plenty of opportunity for you to learn how to do this. There's publications you can take home and study before bed, and you know, plenty of information. Yeah, right. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't, and maybe it's just, I don't remember seeing them in Article 1.
I'm sorry.
I don't remember seeing JPs in Article 1.
Okay, so JPs are an interesting office. They're more or less officers of the state rather than the town, but they're specific to the town. They're elected in November. Yeah, interesting. Yep. And so if we vote to create these positions, we may wind up trying to appoint people to them, depending upon when that next statewide election falls. And the appointment is by the governor on the recommendation of the select board. It's a unique position. It's an interesting position. I have more information if you need more. Stop and see me in the office. Linda.
VLCT will come to Dover and do a training on appeals.
Right on.
I strongly recommend that. Just being the position that we're in, where we're looking at some hefty percentage hikes and values.
Yes, I
Thank
think we
you.
should schedule that for an appropriate time before we start the appeals.
Not too much. We'll have it fresh.
Mark,
Report. And you may not know the answer to this question. I know that there are very few offices in that where you can't hold two or more off. Are there any that are incompatible?
I'd have to look that up, Mark. I'm not entirely sure on that one. I know there's a list. I just don't have it with me. Maybe Lister.
Dana.
We don't have listers. What's that?
Dana's got-
Oh, Dana.
Someone of the town, this committee of other Dover residents, what are the conflicts of interest, right? So maybe my neighbor wants to, grieve their taxes or something, and I don't like him because he's got junk in his yard.
Yeah, so the conflict of interest policy says you can't show favoritism to people. You wouldn't want to sit on a hearing with a relative coming before the board. We'll probably nail down a very specific policy before we start. Of course, you're not going to sit on a hearing of your own property, but yeah, in your neighborhood, I'm guessing that would depend. Sarah.
Well, and I would just say, one of the advantages of having 7 JPs instead of 5 is we have that latitude, so people can easily recuse and not create a situation where we don't have enough people to hold the hearing.
Good. Other questions, concerns, information you'd like to see regarding adding a couple JPs? You can also marry people. Okay.
You can officiate in marriage, you don't get to multiple marriages. You don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Article 17. Shall the voters authorize the select board to apply any surplus from the current fiscal year to reduce taxes in the next fiscal year? Pretty standard, straightforward stuff. Questions? Shall the voters authorize the select board to sell properties which the town has acquired by gift or through tax sales? More boilerplate, but yes, Jerry.
Yes. If you require a piece through this and it's large and it's big enough, it's not just a house or something, say it's like 3 acres. Do you look at possibly making that open space? Would you go and would you discuss that with a professional? I mean, we have warblers that come here in the spring. They come all the way from South America and they need a certain amount of land. So if we continue to build houses everywhere, they're not gonna find where they need to go. And they come back to the same spot every year. So I guess my question is, if you get something like that, instead of just selling it for housing, would you go and try to save it for open space?
Jerry, one clarification I didn't quite catch. These folks are coming from South America. What are they doing?
Birds.
It's a kind of bird. It's a kind of bird.
Oh, all right. I thought you meant people. I'm like, what? All right, gotcha.
So,
Okay, excellent. Yes.
I don't get.
Want me to take this one? Or?
well, and I'd like to, how much of that type of property, Marco, do we acquire by tax? Yeah, very little.
I think in 2021 was the last time we disposed of some. The select board felt it was time, did a review, and we had an auction in this room.
A lot of it, either some of it is small little lots that are, kind of hard to perk or whatever, or buildings or, right? It's not, if we got, if we had 10 acres of pasture somewhere, that would be a different situation. I think we'd have a hard decision, Hold on.
Marco?
Yeah, there was a piece on, Blue Brook, I think that, was it now, that was just, so the town said, hey, this would be advantageous for us to maintain
Yes.
the growth in space.
Also.
Yes. That's standard practice, Jerry, when they accumulate enough properties or somebody shows interest and it's time to do one of these things, Marco and the select board generally contact myself, the Conservation Commission, say, hey, before we auction off some of this stuff, is there anything that you think would be advantageous for the town to hold on to? You know, and we typically look at pieces which provide access to public land, landlocked national forest, which is the piece on Blue Brook that Marco's talking about. There's a number of those pieces. There's also a rather large piece from the north on the west side of Route 100, from the north access road down to you know, the old docks there, Snow Mountain Market. Not the whole distance, but that chunk of woods, when you look down there, there's some sewer line infrastructure and just a bunch of thick spruce trees. That is unbuildable. But it's left over from a development. You know, if you remember Brian Palmer, it was his. And we wound up with it in tax sale because he couldn't build on it. And we saved that because it's beautiful. It's floodplain down there along the river. It abuts Tannery Wildlife Refuge and provides that exact, you know, open space that you're looking for. And we don't sell that. You know, sooner or later, somebody would, you know, take the timber off of it or whatever. And every time they have an auction, they always solicit information from folks. Hey, which ones of these would we regret selling? Yes. Thank you for the question. Is that good?
Thank you.
Right on. Other questions, concerns?
No, it was just to add on, sometimes some of these properties are in flood zone. Partially in a flood zone, and if the town winds up with them, that has to be looked at to determine whether or not it should ever be sold, because it might wind up getting caught up in a buyback or a whole FEMA or flood issue or river corridor issue. So that is also something that we have to take into account.
Thank you, Tabby. Anything else about selling properties acquired by gift or tax sale? Okay, so where are we? 19. Shall the voters authorize the select board to set the tax rate sufficient to cover the approved expenses of the town of Dover and the town of Dover highway for taxes due September 15th, 2025 and February 15th, 2026? More straightforward boilerplate, but questions, concerns? Work out last year for you? Okie dokie. Shall the voters authorize the select board to borrow money in anticipation of taxes?
You ever had to do?
Mark,
That essentially was my question. I was having a conversation.
have you ever had to do that?
You thought it happened recently, and I couldn't remember a time when it did. I've been.
Never since I've been on the board.
I don't recall it.
I do not recall.
Okie dokie. Other questions regarding borrowing money in anticipation of taxes? Article 21, to discuss any items that the voters would like to discuss and to conduct any other business that may legally come before the voters. Typically, this is a spot where you can bring up anything you want. We can't conduct any business or spend any money really, but if you're wondering how people are feeling about a certain issue, if you want to bring something up and have the select board look into it for next year, basically the floor is yours. You're able to speak with your community and get their opinions about things. Jerry.
I think just repeating what I said about the money that we're giving to organizations. I think the select board should look into that, and if we're giving more than $3,000, we need to see a budget. I think, but that's up to the board.
Thank you.
Please consider.
Other topics for discussion under other business? No? Straw polls, fun stuff. Okay. It's all yours, Vicky.
Well, I thank everybody for coming out tonight, and we will try to answer some of the questions that were raised. And have some of those representatives here from some of the other organizations for next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And I'd like to adjourn the meeting tonight at 7:24 p.m.
Thank you.